Good evening, everybody, and welcome. Welcome to our 17th installment of Student Admission Program's virtual panels throughout the month of April to the admitted class of 2024. Thank you to all the viewers that are viewing us tonight, and I hope that we give you the information that you're looking for. I'm your host. My name is Chris O'Brien. I'm the advisor to the Student Admissions Program, and I get to moderate these discussions. And if you've tuned into many of these throughout the month of April, we try to cater each night to a different element of life at Boston College or a different constituency or segment of the population. This is always a popular topic of conversation during our visits and during our programming. Study abroad. So many of our students take advantage of international studies opportunities that we felt that we should devote one of these nights to what those options were and hear from 4 students that have done it. So tonight we'll talk a little bit about the process and the choices our students need to make, academically, how they navigate, and socially, how they navigate, how they would manage a language if they need to learn and be instructed in another language, how their reentry in Boston College is, and what they feel like they've gained from it. All along the way, I'll be moderating some questions. If you have some questions, you're welcome to send them in through the Q&A function on our Zoom call. But I'm going to cover the basics. I think we can get a lot of ground covered. And we do have an expert panel, people I've worked with many, many times. So I know that we're going to have an entertaining and informative night. And panel, I first appreciate you guys joining us tonight. I know that you're getting towards the end of your semester and finals and final projects are looming. So I appreciate the time that you're spending with me and with the students in the future class of 2024. So thank you. I'd like you to introduce yourself, and an introduction will be who you are, where you're from, what year you are, what your major is, so what program you're in, and then the name of the program that you were abroad at, the university or program that you were in, and then for each of you, why you chose that program. You don't have to go into the particulars of the application process. We'll cover that through questions, but we'd all like to know the place you chose and why you chose it. All right. So why don't we go in alphabetical order of your first names, which, again, you have to go all the way to M tonight, which is amazing. Madison, why don't you start?
Hi, everyone. My name is Madison Kelleher, and I'm a junior at BC. I'm originally from Niskuna, New York, and I am in the Morrissey College of Arts and Sciences. In this college, I study political science, Irish studies, and I also have a finance minor in the Carroll School of Management. I went abroad to Trinity College Dublin in Ireland, and I picked this program because it really was going to further my political science studies, and it was something that was personal to me because I have family from Ireland, and it was really special to live in this environment and really learn about the Irish culture from the inside.
Fantastic. Thanks, Madison.
Hi everyone, my name is Nicole Rivera. I am a senior in the Lynch School of Education and Human Development, studying applied psychology and human development, and I also have a minor in management and leadership in the Carroll School of Management, and I'm originally from Long Island, New York. I studied abroad at Royal Holloway, which is a University of London. It was located in Egham, England, which is actually 20 minutes outside of London, and I chose this program because throughout my whole life, I've always been drawn to the UK, and I really wanted to study somewhere within the UK. I was a little bit hesitant about having a language barrier, and I felt that being in the countryside of England, right outside such a great city, would have been just the perfect option for me.
Great. Thank you, Nicole.
Hi, everybody. My name is Patrick Carpenter. I am a junior in the Morrissey College of Arts and Sciences, and I major in economics with a minor in faith, peace, and justice. And I'm originally from Wilmette, Illinois. And I actually went abroad in the same program as Madison, Trinity College Dublin in Ireland last semester. For me, I chose Trinity because it was an awesome opportunity to study at a really good school abroad, and also that I had the chance to live basically right in downtown Dublin, so within walking distance of everything in the city, which I thought was a really cool chance to live in an apartment kind of by myself and be independent in a city in an international country in that way. So definitely a lot of cool experiences there that I can talk about.
Great. Thanks, Patrick. Last but not least, Sophie, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sophie Banshoff, and similar to Nicole, I'm a senior in the Lynch School of Education and Human Development, majoring in applied psychology and human development. and I'm also double minoring both in the Morrissey College of Arts and Sciences in environmental studies and the Carroll School of Management and Leadership. So kind of studying a lot of different things, and I'm originally from Arlington, Virginia. The study abroad experience that I chose is to study in Quito, Ecuador. So I attended Universidad San Francisco de Quito, and I was there taking all my classes in Spanish, which was great. And that was kind of my main goal when I chose that program. I really wanted to like improve my Spanish. My mom is originally from Germany, so I'd kind of experienced a lot of like European culture, and I kind of wanted something a little bit different. So that's part of the reason I chose this program. And it was also internal program, so I knew there would be a lot of support from BC. So I felt really comfortable kind of pushing myself outside of my comfort zone and going to a new country.
Great job, all of you. Now, let me take you back to when you were looking at colleges and when you finally stumbled upon BC. But when you were looking, like, was studying abroad always in the plan? Like, would you have tuned in to this session if we offered it when you were a senior in high school? Like, did you know that this was going to be a thing? And if you did, what kind of questions did you ask someone like me or someone like students like you about studying abroad? So, like, kind of give me a sense of how much of this was really already part of your college experience before you even got to college.
I would say this is something that I always hoped would be part of my four-year plan in college. And it was something through conversations with upperclassmen or friends within clubs at BC, where I just wanted to hear everything about their experience and really know when I can start planning for it. And BC really helps you out at least a year in advance, kind of telling you about the resources that BC can offer you with the study abroad process. And I find that everyone loves to talk about their experience, and I think almost 50% of students at BC study abroad at some point, whether it is a summer program or a program during their junior year. So it's something where it was always talked about on campus, and it made me really excited for when the time came to actually begin the process myself.
Anybody else?
Yeah, something else that I also had kind of known I wanted to study abroad, but I remember not knowing where I wanted to go, and it kind of was overwhelming in the sense that BC has so many placements that you can go, or so many countries that you can go to. So you really have the opportunity to choose from like such a big list. But what's great is we have an Office of International Programs right on campus, and they are in charge of study abroad. So you can like have meetings there with. They basically have different individuals in charge of different programs. So there's someone in charge of like Latin America and Spain, and then there's someone else in charge of, some other countries. So it's nice in the sense that you can like have meetings and learn more about the programs before you have to actually decide where you want to go.
But like we're talking about the plan, and when you get to BC, you have requirements to graduate. You have requirements in your major. You have all these other academic things that you need to get to take care of before you graduate. You need to start that plan pretty quickly. So do you have meetings before you ever meet with anybody in the study abroad office? Do you tell your advisor? Do you tell someone in your department? Do you tell a dean, this is my plan? Or do these programs or majors already have a plan set out saying, all right, if you want to study abroad, this is the trajectory you do? Can one or two of you talk a little bit about when you started to make that plan academically to make sure that you could go away when it was your junior year?
Well, at least for me, and I'm sure Sophie can relate, we have the same major. When I was a freshman and I was meeting with my advisors who advised me in the Lynch School of Education and Human Development, they asked me, are you thinking about studying abroad, or do you think that's in the cards for you? And I answered yes. And from there, they helped me rearrange my schedule to make it so that I saved some of the classes that may have been easier to take at my host institution. So I could save those for junior year and take the classes that may not be offered while in semesters that I knew I would be at BC. So they really helped me out when I was creating my four-year plan and just making sure I'd be able to get all my credits and requirements in, which was really helpful.
Yeah, I think Chris and probably anybody else who's been on a panel with me before knows that when I was in your guys' shoes coming into college as a freshman, I was completely undecided. I didn't really come into school as a freshman with like a 4-year academic plan of the classes I needed to take. I was still figuring out what exactly I wanted to study. And through that process, I kept in mind that I wanted to study abroad, but even though I didn't necessarily put myself on a really specific academic track right away, it was still easy for me to fit in classes I needed for abroad. For me personally, for my economics major, I was actually able to take 2 classes that counted for major credit, as well as a class that counted for minor credit and a core credit class while I was abroad. And obviously this kind of academic side of it, of the planning, depends a little bit on what your major is and what your program is, but there's no limitations in terms of students who are not allowed to go abroad. Every student at BC has the opportunity to plan their academic schedule to make sure they can have an international experience at some point during their career, if they want to.
I mean, all of you had a laundry list of majors and minors. I mean, Sophie, you pretty much have a minor or major in every department we have. So, I mean, you were able to make all that work. Was it difficult?
Yeah, no, I was able to make it all work. It wasn't really difficult at all. I actually didn't take any classes for my major or minor when I was abroad, just because a lot of the courses I wanted to take were just more like elective-like courses. Since they were all in Spanish, I kind of didn't want to try to take like psychology because it was just a little too challenging. So I took other classes, but I was able to fit everything in for my major and my 2 minors because something that's cool about BC is you take 5 classes per semester. So over your course of your time, you'll have a total of 40 courses that you take, and each major is about 10 classes, and then each minor is about 6 classes. So for me, even with all of that, that's 22 classes. So I still had 18 to fulfill the core requirement, and then I had extra space once I did that.
I will.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to also add the process for my political science major and how different majors work to get your classes approved. There are some programs or majors where you have pre-approved classes, so you can just simply look at a list and see which classes interest you, and they already run at the school you're interested in going to. And in my case for political science, I was able to simply email my department head and ask him if these courses would count towards my major, and I got a simple yes, and that's all I needed to show to have these courses transfer back to my major when I came back in the spring. And I was able to take 2 courses for political science and 2 courses for my Irish studies, which makes sense. But it was great because the Irish studies at BC is an interdisciplinary minor, so it was a history course that could count, political science, a literature or language course. So there were so many options, and it was really great how I was able to know what was going to count before I even went abroad.
Someone asked a question about the summer programs as opposed to a semester program. I know what all of you have done. Were you ever tempted to keep a more traditional track towards the majors and programs that you were in at BC and attracted to a summer? Did some of your friends do summer because they were dealing with the same conflict? Like, I don't know where it's going to fit in. But did any of you look at the summer, consider the summer, have a lot of friends that do the summer, or at least again had that internal dialogue about whether the summer or the semester would be working for you best?
I had a lot of friends who did the summer programs, and usually just from the way it worked out, it was people who had more of like the pre-med track or something like that, where they were afraid that they wouldn't get some of their courses or credits to transfer. So they ended up going abroad in the summer for about a month, and some of them took 1 course, some of them took 2 courses, and they just had the best time. It was just the perfect amount of time to take 1 class or 2 classes, and they were able to travel a bit and spend a portion of their summer kind of getting the abroad experience for a short amount of time.
Yeah, they tend to be maybe 4-week classes, sometimes 6 weeks, but they tend to be 4-week classes. Is that what you remember, Nicole?
Yeah, I believe for my friends, it was 4 weeks per class, and some of them took 1, some of them took 2.
Right. That's what I thought too.
And
And then we get into the actual application process and the paperwork and the method that you get there. Do you remember that as being a real arduous process? Was it easier than applying to college the first time around? Was it similar? Was it completely different? Did you have a good feeling about the outcome from advisors that you spoke with, or was it a real mystery if you were going to get in? Can 1 or 2 of you talk a little bit about that process?
I think it was a really helpful process in the sense that BC helped you discover why and where you wanted to go abroad way before it got to the actual application process of picking certain choices. I really appreciated how we all had to go through a a session in the Office of International Programs to hear from a graduate student, someone who has studied abroad and now works in the Office of International Programs. So we got almost a full overview through that, and we were able to go through it with other students hoping to study abroad. And then you were able to create meetings with the regional directors. So I was in touch with Victoria Garcia, the head of the Ireland programs. So she was someone that really was able to speak from experience of how the program works and how I could potentially fit. And she really helped me to discover if I was interested in Trinity, here are some other options you might be interested in picking when the time comes. So it was really helpful to hear that from someone where, as I'm from upstate New York and I have not traveled too much in my life, so it was really helpful to hear through other people's experiences, how they enjoyed it and learn about their backgrounds and how it led them to Ireland as well. So that was really special before we even got to the technical part of the application process.
Great, great. Anybody else just about the application process and what went on with it, and whether you were nervous about it, whether you felt it was, again, an arduous process?
Yeah, for me, the application process was definitely not as hard as applying to college the first time. But I mean, there's still, you have to send over your transcript, write some essays, things like that. But like Madison said, there's a lot of resources to kind of help you through and plan through that process. I remember going to the Study Abroad Fair, where there were like representatives from some of the programs and students who had gone to those programs. And it was really helpful to kind of talk to them to get a sense of what it was like actually going there. And also, I honestly, probably the biggest resource during my freshman and sophomore years in terms of choosing where I wanted to go and what I was really looking for was just talking to upperclassmen that I knew who had come back from abroad, friends who had been to Ireland. And for me, like the other programs I was looking at were in Spain. So I was kind of talked to some juniors and seniors who I knew who had come back from there, and they gave me a really good idea of kind of what the community was like in all the different programs. So that was definitely helpful during like choosing which ones to apply to.
Well, I would guess, and someone even asked this question, like there are some more popular programs than others. If you want to be in Barcelona, that might be a real popular one. If you want to go to, I don't know, Greenland, maybe there's not many people in the queue for that. So is there definitely I don't want to say a hierarchy, but are there more popular programs, and does that make them more difficult for me, the way that you understood the process?
I think it did make it a bit more difficult. The way that we understood the process, it was new for Patrick and I our year, was we were able to designate 3 choices and name a number 1 choice, a number 2 choice, a number 3 choice. And it could be different cities, it could be different programs, it could be specific programs and just broad things where you were really able to put yourself in 3 different pools. And the Office of International Programs got back to you within a couple of months with an offer for 1 program. So thankfully, I was able to go to Trinity, my first choice, but it was something where I feel like I was very aware during the process and understood. I asked that question to Victoria, is there a certain way I should make it number 1, 2, or 3 to make my chances better? And it just really seemed like it was more of a numbers game and not necessarily based on your actual application. So it made me feel comfortable that I was able to be in contact with her throughout the process and kind of go through it with them for the first year. But I felt really comfortable with it, and that I was fully aware of what my choices meant and how it was going to play out.
Okay. So we get accepted to our program, and then we go. So Nicole shows up in London, Sophie shows up in Quito. Like, where do you go? Is there like do you have instructions on like I need to see somebody, or all the people from BC see this person, or all the international students? So like once you get your 2 feet on the ground, like take me through your first couple of days to get settled now that you're at a new school.
So how it worked for me was I connected with another BC student who was also going to the program, and we ended up making it so that we took the same flight over, which was a really calming and nice thing that I thought we did together. So as soon as we got to London, we got just an Uber, because they have Uber in London, to our university, kind of unpacked our things, got our rooms, because we lived on the campus of the university. And then for about a week, we were pretty busy with orientation things that were run by our host institution that was just for all the exchange students who had just arrived. So we were mingling and meeting people and making our schedules and stuff like that. So we were kept pretty busy and in the loop with what we needed to be doing and when, which was really nice.
Great, great.
For me, when I arrived, I'll never forget, I was so nervous. I finally walked through, once you go through customs and everything, and I walk out and I just see my host mom holding a sign that says Sophie Banchoff, and then she's next to Rocio, who was our coordinator, and they just welcomed me with open arms. I remember I didn't know how to do like the Ecuadorian like side kiss thing, and I remember being super embarrassed, but they were like just so nice and so friendly. And then I went home that night with my host mom, and she had prepared dinner. We had our first dinner together. It was just so nice to be so welcomed right at the airport when I walked out. And then after that, we had the next day, we had a day just to spend with our host parents, really like get to know the city. So we did a little bit of sightseeing. And then soon after, we had a BC only orientation. So it was with Rocio, our coordinator, and I was there with 14 other BC students who were there for the semester. So it was super nice to meet everyone before like classes actually began. And then we had an international student orientation at the university with other international students, and then classes started so it had been a total of a week. So it was really nice to have that adjustment period to like get to know the city a little bit better, feel a little bit more comfortable on the campus at the university before classes actually started.
That's great. And then classes start, and is it the same as BC classes? Like, is the same vibe? As you're walking around, first of all, do you feel like you're a stranger in a different land, or does there come a time when you feel very much at home in that place? And especially when it comes to academics, did you feel as if you're at a very similar place academically? This wasn't a big stretch for you, and did you feel like you could get the work done and you got into the vibe and you really adapted to it?
Yeah, for me studying at Trinity, it was not very difficult to kind of get into the stride of the academics personally. Similar to BC, I took a course load of five classes for a semester, which is the same as a normal academic semester would be at BC. And it's not the same from every school, but at least for the program that Madison and I were in, how I experienced it was there was kind of less work on like a day-to-day or week-to-week basis, and a little bit more kind of concentrated at the end of the semester. I would say in terms of like difficulty of the academics, it was not incredibly difficult to like adjust to. I didn't have to work a lot harder than I did at BC. And there were a lot of resources, kind of both BC resources and resources through Trinity, the host institution, that helped international students adjust to kind of that academic lifestyle. And in terms of just kind of feeling at home on campus, it was pretty easy to fall into the campus life. Obviously being in Ireland, there's no language barrier, so all the students are pretty friendly and everything. And there's the opportunity to even like join clubs and go to speaker events on campus and all that kind of thing. Even though you're just a visiting student for a semester, there were a lot of opportunities to kind of get involved in the campus culture.
I wanted to talk more about, Patrick just talked about joining clubs. I was in the rec volleyball club at Trinity, and I was able to be a part of the historical society, and I know they had some fun dances, and you were able to see speakers on campus. And it was really fun, where I haven't really heard of other friends who've gone abroad and about their extracurricular activities. So that was really fun to be a visiting student and to get involved, because as Patrick said, we did have more time. There was not really homework day to day that you were actively doing and handing in. It was a lot of preparing for a midterm or preparing for a final. And also I wanted to touch upon, Patrick said that we lived within walking distance of the city and of Trinity. And I feel like that is something where walking that mile to school every day was something that made me feel like I was part of the city and was part of this school. And the campus life at Trinity is very similar to BC in terms of having lots of green areas, lots of people outside playing sports. And something that was great too is that Trinity gave me kind of a new experience of campus life, because it was almost twice as big with the student body compared to BC. So I did feel, even though I saw Patrick walking around at Trinity, I did feel like I was a part of something different at the same time. So that was really cool too.
And Patrick, just to be clear, you felt like academically Trinity was inferior to Boston College, and it was very much easier to be at Trinity than at BC.
Well, yeah,
That's what
maybe
you're.
you could put it that way. And, it's up to interpretation, I guess.
All right, I just want to make sure I got that. All right, that's good. But you did get grades, didn't you? Get, I mean, under grades on your transcript.
Yeah, so for speaking for Trinity, so that was an internal BC program, which means that the grades that we got were translated into letter grades in the US, and they do factor into our GPA back at BC. So the grading scale was a little bit different. I know those of us who were in Europe and in Ireland and the UK, they grade on like, it's a scale out of 100, but like a 70 is like a really good score. So it's kind of confusing when you first get there. But the Office of International Programs has like a conversion scale. So they kind of convert the grades back into like what the equivalent would be at Boston College. And then, when I got back in the spring, basically those grades are in the process of being put onto the transcripts, like they normally would, because it was an internal BC program.
There are a couple of questions that are coming in about costs. Number one is, are the costs any different in terms of studying abroad? Being at another university, who are you paying tuition? Trinity or BC or, wherever you are? And then what are some of the incidental costs that you came up with? If you're walking a mile to campus every day, and you're getting a coffee, or if there's a meal plan, or, how should people budget, prepare? What are the costs that you need to figure into your plans of studying abroad?
I will say BC was really helpful in meeting with me. I talked about having the preparation start about a year beforehand. Part of that was so that I was fully aware of the costs and what that would mean for my family. And I was able to meet with scholarship advisors in the Office of International Programs, and also through the Montserrat Coalition, which is an organization on campus for lower income students. And I was able to work with both of those advisors to kind of determine which scholarships I'd be eligible for. And I was actually able to get a scholarship through a Boston College grant and through Trinity College. So I was able to write some blog posts for them about my experience as a study abroad student. And I just really felt like BC did a great job of putting up those incidental costs on their website and on visual or virtual resources where I could really see what the budget might be. And obviously that depends on where you're going and what country and what our world is like. But I really felt like I had a clear vision of something like I had to pay for an apartment that wasn't factored into the BC financial aid that transferred to the internal program. So I had to pay for an apartment, and I do agree there were many coffee stops on my walk to campus. So it was different to not have a meal plan like we normally do when we live on campus at BC. So those were all things where BC was more than happy to help you budget for yourself. And for the specific program, I really enjoyed how they had resources on each program and what the costs are.
And Sophie and Nicole, those programs were also internal BC programs. So everything came through Boston College, and any aid or anything you got through BC stayed with you.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I paid my same tuition that I had been paying through BC, and then I paid my host university for my room and board.
Right. Okay. How about talking about your well, no, let's talk about this. I'm trying to make sure I cover all the ground that I wanted to cover about you being away. And I hear a lot from students that study abroad is that the semester is built differently. So there may be time built in where you can travel and see some of the sites and spend time with the host family other than what some of your responsibilities were in the classroom. I mean, similar to spring break, I suppose, here in the States and at a more traditional college. Was that built into your time, and did you have enough time and enough resources to get out and see some other parts of the area where you were studying?
Yeah, I definitely. You want to go, Nicole? You go first.
No, you go.
Okay. I was just gonna say, yeah, I definitely had the opportunity to travel a lot more than I do at BC. similar to Patrick and Madison, my university, it wasn't as much work in the sense I had more free time. So I would be able to like get all my work done throughout the week. So I had the weekends open. And something that's cool about my program is that we actually had 3 trips that were factored into our semester, like included through the BC tuition. So our first trip occurred in February of my spring semester junior year, and we went to a town called San Clemente in the mountains there, and it was so beautiful. We was in indigenous community and really learned about kind of their lifestyle. And they were nice enough to welcome us into their home for a few nights. So they were like our host family for a few days. And then we also went to Galapagos Islands over our spring break as a class. And that was in March, and that was absolutely beautiful. I went snorkeling, it was awesome. And then in April, we went to the Amazon, which was amazing. Probably one of my favorite moments was just, I remember we went tubing in like Napo River right there. It was like the main river where we were staying. And I just remember like going down, it was nice, easy current, and just like looking and seeing monkeys in the trees while I was just going down this river. It was absolutely amazing. One of the most beautiful moments I've ever experienced. So like those are some really fun trips that we had included. And then also just on the weekends, you can do fun trips like just with your friends. So we went to the beach a few times. We went to, some other areas. We were able to do fun stuff like paragliding. I did whitewater rafting. I even did canyoning and stuff. So it's just really, really fun to have that opportunity, which you definitely will be able to do abroad.
I was just going to say that something that was super special for me was that the spring break at my university was a month long. So you have the entire month of April off for your spring break. So that's when I really did the majority of my traveling. I visited a lot of friends who were also studying abroad in Europe, and I met up with my family all within that month, which ended up being really nice because I didn't feel super pressured and rushed to be traveling every single weekend while I was trying to study and go to class towards the beginning of the semester. And I was able to really take my time, get to know my surroundings, kind of explore the town that I was staying in, and hang out with those friends instead of rushing off to the next place really fast. So it really worked out well.
Go ahead, Madison.
I was just going to say really quickly, like Nicole, I was also able to travel a bit outside of Ireland, but something that was really special with the BC and Ireland program was we had a mandatory class that we took with all the BC students in Ireland, and it was in our own BC building on St. Stephen's Green. And part of our coursework there was doing activities around Dublin. These were things where I would not know of them otherwise, and I would not have been able to afford to do them. And these were things where we would go to museums together. We traveled to Dunleary, which was a coastal town, and we jumped in the water. Something that was my most favorite part was my grandparents were coming to visit the morning of one of our activities, and it was just called Experience Gaelic Games. And I texted our program head, Professor Lane, and said, "Is it okay if my poppy comes and participates in Gaelic games?" And she said, "Yes, of course." And the amount of pictures were taken were just so funny. But he was participating with us in Gaelic football, learning hurling, learning handball. And it was just such a fun experience where I will never forget that with my grandparents, but also with all the BC students. And that's something where it was just so nice to have that organized and part of my experience in Ireland.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's fantastic. Very few programs, it's just a smaller fraction of the programs allow you to be with the host family, Sophie. So if students were interested in a program that they had the option of a host family, I've heard you speak of your host before, but you would encourage that, I would suppose, because that really enhanced your experience abroad.
100%. Yeah, I really love that component. So just to talk a little bit about my host family. So I live with Gabby, my host mom, and it was just the 2 of us in the apartment. And it was really nice because, first of all, it really pushed me to like speak Spanish a lot more, because sometimes when we got together, with other BC students that were abroad, we wouldn't really speak Spanish necessarily. So it was nice every morning and evening to have meals with her and like actually be pushed to like speak. But she was also so nice. I never felt intimidated by it. She always was willing to help me if I forgot a word, or if I didn't understand what she said, I could always ask, like, can you repeat it? She was very like nice in that way. So I really loved it. It was also good in the sense like her sister is also a host mom. So a BC student was living with my host mom's sister. So like we would all get together a lot of times, and it would just be so great to have someone else there that was also international, also from BC, and to like have that whole kind of family while being away. I really felt included and part of the family when I was there. I'm still very much in touch with my host mom. I've been talking to her a lot like through this whole situation. So it's just nice to like have that relationship with someone. Yeah.
And Sophie, would you not have been able to participate if you didn't have a level of Spanish in order to participate, in order to go to that program? Like, do you needed to have some threshold of Spanish?
Yeah, so there's a minimum requirement for certain programs, including Ecuador. It's through Intermediate 2, which is 4 semesters of Spanish at BC. But you can also test out of that. So if you like took Spanish in high school and you just take a proficiency exam, you can test out of that like requirement. You don't necessarily have to take Spanish while at BC, but there is at least 4 semesters worth.
Many people are asking questions about studying internationally at 2 places. Maybe you felt like you were gone long enough. Maybe you didn't want to come back. Maybe you were tempted to go someplace else. Maybe you knew someone who went someplace else. Maybe you know those few students who go for a full year. But I mean, a student can go abroad to 2 different places. Was that ever on your radar screen? Do you know people that did it? Talk a little bit about that option.
Yeah, me personally, I 1 semester was enough. I didn't want to leave BC for 2 semesters. I wanted to have at least some time back on campus for my junior year. So I just stuck with the 1 semester. But I did know people who did 2 semesters. There was somebody in the Trinity program who lived in the same building as Madison and I, who was staying for the spring semester and doing 2 semesters there. I also had a friend who went to 2 different places. She actually went and did a summer program in Spain during the summer between sophomore and junior year, and then went off to Australia for the fall of junior year. So she had a pretty quick turnaround because the semesters in Australia and New Zealand are a little bit different timing. But so she basically went from Spain and then back home and then pretty much straight to Australia, which was definitely an interesting experience for her. But, she wanted to get those kind of different abroad experiences of going all the way down under and then also to Europe. So that was definitely a cool experience for her to be able to get kind of both of those things.
I will say too, you can also opt to extend your study abroad program. I know when I was deciding between going in the fall or the spring, Victoria, the Ireland advisor, said, well, you can decide later. You can go in the fall and then see if you want to stay there for the spring. And I know you can also extend your program you're in, or you can try to apply to another program while you're still abroad. So that is an option if that comes up during your time abroad.
To the newcomers, to the people that haven't studied abroad yet, do you recommend the fall or do you recommend the spring?
That's a good question. It's a personal choice. There obviously, when you're leaving BC for a semester, if you're going to leave in the fall, you're going to not be there for football season. If you're going to leave in the spring, you're not going to be there for Marathon Monday and hockey season mostly and things like that. So it's kind of different for each person. Traditionally, like historically, there have been slightly more students who study in the spring than the fall. So one thing to note is sometimes for the programs that are more popular, it can be a little bit like quote unquote easier to get into them if you're doing the fall rather than the spring. I personally really wanted to go in the fall because I really like spring on campus at BC, first of all, like when the weather's getting nicer and everything. And I also had a few friends who were going in the fall kind of to like other places, not the same program as me. So it was kind of nice for us to, first of all, be able to visit each other in places in Europe, but then also kind of come back and be on campus together in the spring, with my closest roommates.
Anybody else want to throw their 2 cents in about the fall or the spring?
I was going to say the same things except for the opposite. I studied abroad in the spring just because I love fall on campus. So definitely a personal preference, but either way, whatever semester someone ends up going abroad, it ends up working out and being great.
All right, now let's talk about the return. Number one is just the practical matter of going back to a dorm. Like, how did you leave it with your friends or with housing for you to return? And then second is just the emotions, like the feelings. Like, you were just walking the streets of Dublin. You were just zip lining through the trees in Ecuador, and now you're just in Boston, and it's starting to snow. So can you talk a little bit about sort of the emotional part, but also the practical part about your return? For a couple of you can talk about that.
I feel like I've been telling my family and friends I was not ready to come back to BC or come back to the United States until the day I left. And I think that meant that it was the perfect amount of time for 4 months, and that I was ready to come back and tell my story in some way. And I aligned going in the fall with some of my friends. We were all excited to get back on campus in the spring. And the junior year was also the year that I lived off campus the spring semester. So at BC, we either get 3 or 4 years of housing, and I got 3. So it was also exciting to think about everyone coming back senior year and being together on campus. And that was something I was looking forward to. But I have to say, at this point in my life, Dublin feels like a life away. It feels like another lifetime. And I look back on that time with only fun, great memories. And it reminds me of that when I see faces like Patrick's on campus, and that's really special.
Yeah, kind of similar to Madison. I remember not being like ready to leave until like the last day. And of course, you're gonna be very emotional leaving. Part of me was really excited to come back to the US and have some familiarity and, see people I hadn't seen for 4 months. And part of me was really sad, like leaving the people that I had met. So it's definitely an emotional goodbye at the airport. But something that's nice about the spring semester is that you have the summer to kind of adjust back to life before going back to BC. So by the time I got back to BC this past August, I felt much more acclimated to what it was going to be like. So that's something just to keep in mind when you're deciding between fall and spring. Spring, you'll have more of that adjustment period before going back.
Yeah, for me, it was, I agree with Madison. Like 4 months was a pretty good amount of time. I was ready to get back with my friends on campus and everything. In terms of the logistics of like housing, I also was living off campus this past semester. And so basically some of my friends did not go abroad, so they were there for the whole year. Some of us went abroad in the fall, and then there were some other people who we knew who were going abroad in the spring. And so basically we had a house rented off campus, and I subletted in that house, like from the people who were leaving for abroad in the spring, and basically just took over their spots. So it worked out pretty well logistically. And also, I mean, it was definitely, I was ready to get back on campus and see everybody and kind of get back into my clubs and things like that. But also now, given all the change that's happened in the last couple of months and all the stress and everything that's gone with it, I definitely miss the simplicity of life abroad. Looking back on how my life was like 4 months ago when I lived in Dublin and barely had anything to worry about except for, just going to class and figuring out where I wanted to travel on the weekends and things like that, to everything that's going on now. Definitely, miss that experience a lot, but it was an appropriate amount of time, I think, for me.
So the $1 million question, I suppose, to finish tonight was like, what did you get out of it? On the build up to going away, there's probably so many things that you wanted to have as part of your experience of going abroad and being in a new institution, meeting new people, living with native members of the community. How are you better? How are you different? What did you get out of it that will be with you for a lot longer than the time you were away? If maybe you can all answer that question just real, quickly, what you got out of it.
Well, for me, I hate the saying that abroad changed me, but the fact of the matter is that I really did come back a different person, and I think it was because it was just really essential in just me maturing. I learned how to do so many things that I didn't know before going abroad. Planning weekend trips, booking flights, booking Airbnbs, navigating through cities and airports where you don't speak the language, meeting so many different kinds of people from different walks of life, and eating new foods and getting new experiences that I just feel like I really gained so much of a better sense of just the world in general. And I feel like if I wouldn't have gone abroad, I would not be who I am today, which is cheesy but true.
Yep. Yep. Cheesy but true. Anybody else?
Something I got out of it is just I really felt like I pushed myself a lot, getting out of my comfort zone. I think in a way that gave me more confidence kind of coming back. You know, when I was in Ecuador, I had to speak Spanish pretty much all the time, which I'm a pretty timid person, so it was a lot, but it was really good in the sense that I feel like I grew a lot as a person, while also being supported. Like I never felt like it was too much because I did have, you know, Rocio, my coordinator, my host mom, other students. Another great thing is that when you study abroad, you'll like be around all new people. So I met some amazing friends that those friendships I'll cherish for the rest of my life. So that's been something great. And then hopefully got a little bit better at Spanish.
That's great. I will say something that really changed the way that I look at myself was I do not regard myself as someone who always goes with the flow. And since there was all this preparation to go abroad, and it wasn't as simple for me as, oh, what would be most fun or where do I want to travel? It was more of how can I make this work? And something I really wanted to challenge myself to do was to enjoy it once I made it work. And I was really able to live in the moment and do spontaneous things when I was abroad. And I hope that carries back into my life in the future. And I'm just really thankful that I was able to, because of BC's resources, go abroad and to really have things fall into place because of all that preparation beforehand.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything that's been said so far. I definitely feel like I became a lot more confident in myself in terms of being independent when I was abroad. You know, although I had those support systems there of the program coordinator and other students from BC. You know, the apartment that I lived in, we lived in like a student residence complex, but I didn't know any of my roommates. I had one from Australia, one from Russia, one from somewhere else in the United States, and we had our own bedrooms and then shared a kitchen. So I was cooking for myself every night, you know, doing grocery trips and everything like that. So definitely got more used to that than I would kind of living in like a dorm on campus, which I really appreciated. And kind of, as Sophie said, one of the great, like, I think more tangible things that I got from abroad was a really, really great new group of friends who I hadn't known before. Both people from BC who I had not really met on campus through my first 2 years, who were part of the program, who I got really close with, as well as Irish students, and then also people from around the world. Like, I think that's sometimes something that's a little overlooked for some programs, is that Madison and I lived in a building that had international students. So like I said, I have friends from like Canada and other places in Europe who just happened to also be studying in Ireland at that time. So that was a cool experience too.
Well, it's a pretty good bet that the people who tuned in tonight were thinking about studying abroad anyway, but I think you convinced them all based on all of the ways that you talked about your experience and how BC was helpful and how you grew from it. This was really fun. One of my biggest regrets is that I didn't do it. Now, granted, I went to college at a much different time. The world wasn't as small as it is now, but I try to live vicariously through all of you guys. I would have loved to be in all the places that you talked about and grown the way that you grew as college students. So I'm really impressed and very proud of you going there, taking some independence and getting out of your comfort zone and making it your own. So thank you. And thank you for sharing the information tonight. I think it was really helpful. It was great to see you. Sophie and Nicole, you're welcome back at any time. Graduation is in October, I heard. So stay safe and congratulations. And thank you for all you've done in SAP. Patrick and Madison, we'll see you soon. Let's get on the other side of this, whenever that might be. And we can't wait to see you all on campus. Thanks a lot, guys, tonight. It was great. And thank all of you for watching. Good luck. We hope to see you on campus sometime real soon. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thanks, guys.